Right, so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about separation and Jagmeet Singh was in the news again for from pundit class here saying NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says Quebec is special and can unilaterally change the constitution, but Alberta cannot, doubling down on asymmetrical federalism, the poisonous double standard that will tear Canada to pieces. Um, and yeah, it is really terrible, and it is exposing the hypocrisy that goes on now. The difference being, well, there shouldn't be a difference, but the big difference being is that I think when it comes to separation, these leftists have a very interesting strategy. And the strategy, well, let's briefly double back and point out the obvious in that if the leftists actually believed what they believe, they would support separation. And hear me out on this one. I'm sure a lot of people already know this, but the point being is that leftists want, I mean, most leftists, I mean, if you talk to the average leftist, they have at least one major issue where they think the government isn't far left enough on. Whether they objectively are or aren't on, they all do, right? Pretty much all of them do. Like the amount of leftists I know that are like, yeah, the left is gone. Well, not I know, but because I don't actually know that many, especially ones that are that crazy. But the amount of people that I hear that are on the left that say, "Oh yeah, the left has gone way too far left over the last decade or so." Like they're almost non-existent, right? They exist, but they're pretty well non-existent. So the point I'm trying to get at is, if the left actually believed what they believe, they would support Western separation for the simple reason that the most conservative provinces by far are Alberta and Saskatchewan. So, in other words, if Alberta and or Saskatchewan, but especially Alberta, left Canada, formed their own country, it would immediately guarantee leftist rule in Canada. And it would probably guarantee, if not be very close to NDP or Bloc um, as the official opposition. The NDP, if they go, I don't think the Bloc would have enough seats because there isn't enough in Quebec. But if the NDP got their crap together, they probably would be able to form the official opposition because there's only so many areas in Ontario and Manitoba, and it's basically the only other areas left. Maybe northern BC has some as well, where the Conservatives actually have a legitimate chance, right? So that's the point I'm trying to make is that if the left, that like, if you talk to the average leftist and you ask them, okay, well, if I could virtually guarantee you that you would get what you want, you would have a better chance of getting what you want politically, and almost guarantee that the people on the other end of the spectrum are almost guaranteed to not get what they want, would you not want it? Like, why would you not want that? Like, it makes no sense. And the same goes in reverse. Like, if you are a conservative, if you are right leaning, even moderate, like I would argue even moderate. If you are not on the left in Alberta or Saskatchewan, and you are insane to not support separation. And the argument I would give is Canada is trending left, even in Alberta and Saskatchewan, right? It's not like we're still the major outliers. We just lean conservative, which is what we appear as we're way out there on the spectrum, but no, we only appear as way out there on the spectrum because they're comparing us to far leftist, right? Like Jagmeet Singh. So that is the point I would bring up. That if you're on the left, you have absolutely no reason to not support separation, and if you're on the right, you have no reason to not support separation. Um, so I don't understand why there's so many hiccups. Now the problem is people seem to have this idea as, oh, we've done it this way for so long, we should continue to do it that way. But again, that's, to quote Joe Biden, that's Neanderthal thinking, right? In that just because we've done it some way for X number of, how do you know it's the best way of doing it, right? And here's the other reason too that I would bring up is that people say, "Oh no, Alberta separation wouldn't work. We wouldn't get pipelines through any of that kind of stuff." Which, yeah, we might not be able to get pipelines through, but here's the thing: if Alberta separates and it turns out to be a disaster, what's going to happen? well, Alberta is going to be forced to come crawling back to Canada, and in doing so, Alberta would be forced to adopt, oh, you got to have all these restrictions on pipelines, and you got to have a carbon tax, and you got to adopt all the far left policies. That would be what would happen. So again, like that argument of, oh, it wouldn't work, no, it's a terrible argument, right? And if it wouldn't work, well, people would just leave, right? People would just leave. Like these people's arguments are so terrible, it's not even funny. And it just goes to show just the echo chamber that the average person lives in, that they genuinely believe that these arguments they bring up are legitimate, right? I mean, the one thing I would always bring up too is that if you're in a debate with someone and they're bringing things up that you've never heard, it's unless it's like crazy, crazy stuff. But um, most of the time, if you're in a debate and you're not aware of what the other side, the best arguments that the other side has, then you live in an echo chamber by default. And you're probably wrong about what you believe, right? Because the people whose beliefs are most grounded in reality are always going to be the people that have the most well-rounded worldview, basically. Um, but anyway, now that I got that out of the way, um, again, like why, like I don't know exactly what Jagmeet Singh's reason is, but I imagine there's no way there's anything in the Constitution that says Quebec can change the Constitution whenever it wants, but no other province can, or even specifically Alberta. Like, come on, there's no way that exists, right? There's no way that exists. So again, they're clearly lying, right? And I mean, Jagmeet Singh is very interesting as well, and that he's so. I mean, I've and not to mention too, like I think he's an absolutely terrible, just complete piece of garbage. Um, Addicted to virtue signaling, like that's based like Jagmeet Singh is the prototypical left wing politician, like the stereotype of the bad leftist politician, right? And that they're absolutely, I mean, Justin Trudeau, I mean, may take the cake on virtue signaling, but Jagmeet Singh definitely gives him a good run for his money. In that they're so addicted to virtue signaling, it's not even funny. To the point to where they're willing to say the most insane things. It's not even funny. Like the anti-lockdown protesters, they're white nationalist rallies. Like, come on. Like, even if you're the most strongest lockdown supporter ever, like there's no way you actually believe that. Like, how insane do you have to be to believe that? And the other thing too is that it's the pro-Palestine rallies that have the literal World War II German insignias all the time. I've seen like 10 different pictures of them. Yeah, funny they don't ever call those white nationalist rallies or racist rallies, right? Very funny. But, you disagree with lockdowns, that immediately means you're a racist. And, for anyone who doesn't know, again, when the left accuses people of being racist, what they're really saying is that I don't have an argument against your argument, but I know that the people who follow me are dumb enough to believe that if I just blindly accuse you of being racist, they'll believe it. That's really what they're saying. But yeah, I mean, why not, right? And here's the other reason I think that they say stuff like this is that they don't think that there's enough support for separation in Alberta, which personally I don't think that there is, right? Not because we shouldn't, mainly because I think so many people are so heavily propagandized, right? And that if people actually had an honest worldview on separation, I think it would be. I mean, absolutely it would be. But the problem is people don't actually have an honest worldview. Let's say people have this heavily biased, propagandized, brainwashed point of view. But yeah, I mean, this is where we're at these days. That the rules are so selective. It's not even funny. It's what I bring up all the time, that you can't run a society, you can't run a business, you can't run a household, you can't run anything if there's such a massive double standard, right? Like, if you're gonna have rules, if the rules aren't universal, you're gonna create problems. Guaranteed. Like, I guarantee you'll have problems if you have rules that aren't universal. But like I said, I think the one thing that these leftists rely on is that people will fall for their propaganda, and they're right about that, I think, which is very unfortunate. Like, it's part of the reason why I do this. But they rely on the mainstream media, the public schools, the universities brainwashing people and pushing their propaganda. So um, anyway, like I said, just complete insanity, and not to mention too, like when it comes to Jagmeet Singh too, I mean, it's just so ironic to see him do that because, again, he accuses these anti-lockdown protesters of being white nationalists, but he's also the only politician that I'm aware of that has ever been banned from India, right? Which is very funny that he's banned from his own country that he was born in, I believe. Um, but again, he's going around accusing people of being extremists, basically. Like it's literally like the pot calling the kettle black on steroids. Like which again is kind of just the sign of the times. But um, anyway, like I said, I just wanted to bring that up because it's very interesting that that's what people believe, right? And then not to mention too, if Alberta can, like, then the last thing I guess I'll bring up is that what is Jason Kenney doing? I think he's just proving to people that at the end of the day he doesn't care all that much about Alberta. But like, what are these guys doing? Like, it's the thing that just makes absolutely no sense. That again, Jason Kenney, like, he's gonna go down in the history books as a villain. Most likely, he's gonna go down in the history books as a villain. Like, the only chance that Jason Kenney doesn't go down in the history books as a villain is if he actually be conservative, right? He thinks it's the other way around, that he can play this middle ground. But again, like, people who think they can play the middle ground, like, you don't understand politics. I don't care if you're how high up you are in politics. I don't care who you have a political science. I don't care. Like, it's so abundantly obvious that if you're a conservative, there's nothing you can do to please the left. Like, Erin O'Toole has given in on pretty much everything, especially the major issues. He's given in on climate change, abortion, the list goes on. Has any form like is there a major push from former Liberal voters or NDP voters to vote for him? Like, no, absolutely, he's down in the polls, right? He's down obviously because right wingers of actual conservatives are not voting for him anymore. But again, so like, what are these guys doing? And again, I really commend Quebec for actually looking out for their own self-interest, but um, what is Alberta doing? Like, we should be doing the exact same thing, right? We should be doing the exact same thing. So I have no idea what we're doing. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Um, Follow me on those other platforms. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, then you're missing most of my content. So check me out on Rumble and BitChute. Also, if you want to donate, you could do that as well. Again, I would appreciate whatever support I can get. But like I say, check me out on those other links or those other platforms. Sorry, and stay tuned for more.